and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 172, and today's date is September 25th, 2013, and the title of this episode is Alert One Step Closer to the Big Event, Be Prepared. And what has happened is that the State Department just issued a worldwide terror alert for the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Europe. And what they are trying to tell us is that something is going to happen, and they are building this up and using the scare tactics that al-Qaeda is getting stronger. They're more sophisticated. They're bigger than they ever were. They are now already infiltrating Europe, America, and they are in these lone wolf packs that we cannot track. And this is what they want us to believe, because what they have planned is going to be very, very big, and it's heading this way. And this is why we're seeing all of this happen. This is why we saw al-Qaeda and al-Shabaab down in Kenya building this terrorist picture, so we know that something is going to happen. And they are building the propaganda because this is the only way they know how to make the case of this next false flag to hit the U.S. And before we get into all of that, let's go through the economic collapse news, and then we'll end up with what is happening. And there are very strange things that are happening around the world that I will get into. And right now, France, their public debt is going to hit a record 95.1% of GDP in 2014. You know, the French have a double-digit unemployment. Spain has double-digit unemployment right behind Greece. Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, Italy, all high unemployment, all high debt. And as we know, countries with high debt, high unemployment cannot be sustained. And what happens is they run out of money and they need to go and get more money. And this cannot be sustained. We see this happening here in the United States, where Jack Lew is saying that the U.S. will run out of money on October 17th, and they're working on this special bill that will give them some time and allow them to spend money, because right now what they're doing is they're robbing the government pensions to fund the government at this point. And again, they will only shut down parts of the government and only the parts that the people care about. And this is what usually happens. All that NSA spying, all of that money that's going out to the rebels, the paid mercenaries in Syria, all the money going to Israel, all the money going to Saudi Arabia, all the money that are funding the other countries like Spain, France, Italy, where the Fed is giving tons of money over there. They are not going to cut any of this because they rather cut the things that the people see. You know, like the army bases that can't shoot off fireworks, things like that. And they rather have it hit home to let the American people know, see, this is what happens. But they continually fund billions and billions and billions of dollars for everything else that they want that has nothing to do with the people here in America. Now, what we're seeing now is that Walmart is having a little bit of a problem. We know that sales are declining and things are not going well. Well, Walmart cutting orders as unsold merchandise piles up. And what's happening is the inventory growth at Walmart outstrips sales gains in the second quarter at a faster rate than at the retailer's biggest rivals. And what the merchandise has been piling up because people are not, purchasing. And what they did was they ordered all this stuff and they thought people would just come in and buy it. And guess what? They're not. People are being frugal. And we have to remember, and it's just amazing to me how people just cannot see this. If people are unemployed, underemployed, and we're not counting the people who are looking for jobs because they cannot find jobs, that means there's a small amount of people out there that are actually making the same type of living that they were. And for this to work, and especially for the lower class, middle class who shop in Walmart, if they are not making enough money, how do you expect them to buy things or buy extra things at the stores? What they're going to end up doing is they're going to buy food. They're not going to go and spend money on a TV. They're not going to go spend money on extra clothes that they don't need. They're only going to buy things that they absolutely need, not what they want. And there's a very big difference. We were an economy that I want it, I'll buy it. Now we are turning into an economy, if I need it, then I'll go get it. And we can see this changing with all the retail stores. And this is why you see sales declining in Best Buy, you see sales declining in Radio Shack, you see sales declining in GameStop, in JCPenney. Well, JCPenney is just doing awful, but that's a whole other story. In Sears, in Kmart, and you see Barnes & Noble, and you see stores starting to cut back and get rid of a lot of retail stores. Target, for instance, is hiring less people during the Christmas season because they understand that this Christmas season is going to be a very tough season. And if you noticed, the Christmas stuff was put out in August. And I was in the stores and I see Christmas trees already, and they're making this push to try to get people in the mindset of buying things for Christmas already. But again, people understand, especially those people who are living day to day and don't have extra money, where they got laid off and now they have part-time jobs and they're just trying to make ends meet, or those people who don't even have work because they can't find it. They are not going out and purchasing things that they really don't need. And we see that durable goods have declined, negative 0.1% on expectations of 1% increase, which also was the third consecutive miss in the series in a row. And capital good orders and shipments, non-defense excluding aircraft, both missed expectations, rising at 1.5% versus 2% and 1.3% versus the expected 1.5%. So we see things that are not going well. And I saw this very interesting headline in Reuters. U.S. household wealth increases by $1.3 trillion in second quarter. So hopefully everyone out there is feeling it. We're all becoming wealthier. There's a $1.3 trillion in U.S. household wealth. And I saw this and I went, really? How could this possibly be? This doesn't make sense. But again, all those people that are just reading headlines are going to see this, and the first thing that comes into your mind is that, wow, people are saving again, people are working again, this is great, unemployment's down 7.3%, the economy is doing fantastic. But then you look and you see what they're considering wealth. Well, they're counting if your home went up in value, that's part of the U.S. household net worth, and they're counting the stock market. So basically, they are counting the higher home prices and an increase in the value of the stocks and mutual funds in the stock market, which is all paper increases, which is not real net worth wealth increase. Because if we look around and we see what's really happening, and we see what the unemployment rate is, and we see what the savings rate is, and we see what people are actually bringing home in income, it shows a very different story. The real median incomes are down 7.3% since 2000. So income is going the opposite direction. Instead of people making more money, people now are making less money for the same jobs. And disposable income is down, and people who are saving money is down. And we see this painting a very different story. So here, since the year 2000, the mean average income fell from 76,000 to 71,000, a decline of $4,900. Since the year 2000, the median income fell from 56,000 to 51,000, and that's a decline of $5,000 or 9%. So this is showing us a very different story of when they're talking about people are making more money, and they're talking about the Fed increasing the housing prices by creating a bubble, the Fed increasing the stock market by pumping in billions of dollars into the banks and instructing them to pump up the stock market and making people believe that the U.S. household wealth has gone up. It's an illusion and it is fake. There is no substance to this whatsoever. And we're also seeing this now if we take a look at new home prices. The median new home price drops to lowest since January 2013. This goes on to say new home sales meet expectations of 421,000 after downward revisions in the last month, which was already the biggest miss of expectations in over 3 years. We do see a small run-up, and it looks like, if you look at the graph here, I have it on the x22report.com site, it looks like a dead cat bounce where things are starting to move up a little, but then what's going to happen, it's going to completely drop down because all those decline in mortgage applications, the slower traffic in new home building, the decline in new construction is all dropping, and all of this is going to catch up. And this goes on to say that the unadjusted number of homes sold was a mere 35,000, the third lowest in 2013, and 11,000 have yet to be started. Supply is rising at 5.1 months unadjusted. This is the highest in 2013, and the median home prices have slumped to their lowest level since January 2013. So we see that the housing market is trying to make its last leg because of all the sales and stuff throughout the summer. But what's going to happen, and this is always a lag, that things will start to collapse as we move into the winter months. And guess what? The Fed knows this. The Fed is the housing market. The Fed is the stock market. The Fed is pretty much everything right now, and it is a huge illusion that we are in at this point, and they are just putting out propaganda, and I've been saying this all throughout my other reports, trying to convince, and Europe is doing the same thing, trying to convince everyone that the economy is really doing well, and they need this. And they need to keep the illusion up for what is coming because they don't want people to think like, whoa, wait a minute, the economy was really doing this bad and now we're blaming this on someone else? No, it doesn't make sense. The economy is doing really well, and America and Europe is just about to recover with double-digit unemployment and with negative GDP. But wait, hold on. All that's manipulated so everything looks good. But the real calculations show everything really worse off than it is, and they are trying to make everyone believe that we are about to emerge and recover. And right when this is about to happen, this event is going to hit. And we can see them building up to this next event. And in my other reports, and I've been saying this for a long time, what they need to do is they need to get the gun bills passed. And this is not to go, and I get a lot of emails, and I'm trying to answer everyone's emails as I get them. There's just a lot of them, and I'm going through them every single day to answer everyone's questions. Here's one of the questions. If they are trying to get these gun bills passed, how are they going to go about confiscating everyone's weapons all at once? Well, they're not going to do it all at once and as soon as these laws are passed. They want the laws on the books to make everyone believe they have the right to go around and confiscate your weapons. And this is why they want this passed. And they want to start limiting the number of sales at this point. And, Maryland passed a draconian gun law, which is completely null and void, according to the Second Amendment. And what they're seeing in Maryland right now is that they're receiving the record number of firearm applications because the anti-Second Amendment bill goes into effect on October 1st. And they're saying that they've never seen anything like this before. We do understand that Kerry signed the UN Arms Treaty today, and don't worry, our government official says, don't worry, it's not going to harm the U.S. rights or the Second Amendment, and you know right there and then to not believe them, because whatever the government officials say, it is always the opposite. They are not doing this for your best interest. They are not for the people anymore. They are for the central bankers. And what we can see is John Kerry signed it. It doesn't mean that it's in effect. It has to pass the Senate. And what they're doing right now, and I saw two incidences today that the authorities stopped a Salt Lake Mall shooting, and there was a shooting in the East Garden City Mall, and they're going to try to pass this UN Arms Treaty and gun bill using this Navy mass shooting and all the other mass shootings. And if they cannot get it through with this, there will be another mass shooting. They will do this until they get this passed. We have to remember the president already has all the executive orders written up, ready to go to support the UN Arms Treaty and the Dianne Feinstein gun bill. And they are sitting there and waiting. Now, I don't know if most of the people who have been listening to me for a while, back in my reports, I said something about Afghanistan, and the corporate media and the government said that we'll be removing our troops, and I think that was one of President Obama's promises, that he's going to get our troops out of Afghanistan. And in my reports I told you absolutely not, no way. Afghanistan grows poppies, and they use this poppies for drugs, and Afghanistan has a lot of natural resources. They have one of the biggest copper deposits. China is making a move into Afghanistan, and the central bankers in the U.S. government are not going to let that they're not just going to give up the natural resources. There's just absolutely no way. So right now, the department announces that 9,000 troops are going to be deployed to Afghanistan this winter. We are never leaving these areas. Whatever these government officials tell you, it's a bunch of BS. Just look up each country, see what natural resources they have. If they have anything that's worthwhile to the central bankers, we are not leaving. And if they have huge deposits, the central bankers are invading, because they want them. Because guess why? They want to take their worthless printed money that they print or create out of thin air, and they want to trade that in for hard assets. That's all they're doing. It's an incredible scam. Now, India is going to get a refitted Russian ship in November. It's an aircraft carrier, and it's going to be handed over to the Indian Navy. And we can see that these countries are starting to build up with ships and military assets, because they know what is coming. The U.S. has just flown its unmanned F-16 fighter and has made this into a weaponized combat drone now, and we do not need pilots for the F-16s at this time. Now, there was a report that Guinea is warning of a coup from outside forces. And a Guinea government minister said on Wednesday the country was in danger from outsiders plotting against it amid media reports that a coup was being planned in the capital of Conakry. And this goes on to say that it has seen French and American Secret Service documents announcing a coup in the city. Guinea is in danger, and the strings are being pulled from the outside. And the unrest could be triggered as early as next week. And I said, okay, Guinea, that's interesting. I wonder what's in Guinea. Well, Guinea possesses 25 billion tons of bauxite, which is aluminum ore, and it makes up about one half of the world's reserves of aluminum. In addition, Guinea also includes 4 billion tons of high-grade iron ore, significant diamond and gold deposits, and there's an undetermined quantities of uranium. So something is going to happen in Guinea, something really big, and what is very interesting is that they have tons and tons of natural resources. That's why the French and U.S. went into Mali, because they are the third largest gold producer in the world. And the central bankers and the French government want control of the gold mines in Mali, and that's why they are there in those places. Throughout the Middle East, the natural resources is oil, and they want to control the natural resources there. And we can see all of this taking place in the pictures being painted, and the central bankers understand they need to control as much as they possibly can, not just oil, but of gold, of aluminum, of uranium. They want all of this, especially in Afghanistan, which is one of the hugest copper deposits, and they see this and they want it all. And the U.S. empire is being spread across the globe, almost like the Roman Empire, and eventually this will not be able to be sustained. But what they believe is that they keep capturing these natural resources, they can keep this system going. And if it does fail, they think they own all these natural resources, and they will be able to reset the system using this and start the world back on Bretton Woods #2. And this is what their plan is. And they understand the dollar is dying. And this is another question that people ask me. Why do they want to destroy the dollar? They don't want to destroy the dollar. They already know it's dying. They are trying to prop it up and keep it going for a longer period of time. This is why they're invading Syria, or want to invade Syria. I'm talking like it already happened. This is why they want to get into Syria and then get eventually into Iran. This is why the central bankers, U.S. government, are in Afghanistan, Mali, the African nations. This is why they're making a play in Kenya. This is why they're making the play, because they need to continually prop up the U.S. dollar because it's on its last leg, and if they don't do it, it completely comes crumbling down. Now, in the past, I've said that the central bankers, U.S. government, need to do a couple of things. They need to get these gun laws passed, which they're in the process of doing. I've mentioned many, many times that CISPA is pending in the Senate, and that is control of the flow of information, which is the Internet. They do not like the Internet whatsoever. It interrupts their plans, and they don't like people listening to it because they have no control over it. They do have control over the corporate media, which is owned by 5 corporations, and the government feeds them the information that they can report on, and they follow along with that. They control the creation of money, and what they're doing now is the CISPA bill is pending in the Senate, and Dianne Feinstein, my favorite person, is out there working on legislation that would encourage companies and the government to share information about cyber attacks. She is working on a bill that is a counterpart to CISPA that will assist in bringing this all live and getting it passed. Now, nobody wants CISPA. They tried it once before. It was shot down. It was reintroduced by Mike Rogers, and he is trying to pass the House. It is pending in the Senate. So what do we have in the Senate? We have the gun bills, the UN Arms Treaty, the gun bill, and CISPA. Those things that they need to control. So what's going to happen? Well, we understand that they are going to use events, and it's going to happen very soon. I've been reporting on this, and I see what is happening here. Hopefully everyone else sees what's happening, and they are putting this all together to build up the propaganda to sell this to the American people that it was al-Qaeda, which is linked to Syria, which is linked to Iran, which is linked to the Muslim world, of course, and this is what they're trying to sell. During this time, they will have the opportunity to get CISPA passed, because along with this event, I do believe there will be some type of cyber attack. I don't think it will be a one-off event. I think it will be multiple events that are going to occur. I think what's going to happen, just like we saw during 9/11, we saw the World Trade Center, but we also had the Pentagon. We also had other planes. I believe what's coming next is going to be the same type of thing, where we're going to see maybe a nuke explosion someplace. We're going to see a cyber attack on the financial institution and on the power grid system. We're going to see other type of attacks across the country where at this time they will be able to declare martial law and shut things down, because we don't know where these lone wolf al-Qaeda people are. They're running around the country, and the U.S. government needs to take control. At this point, the executive orders will come into play. They will be able to pass CISPA with no problem, and the president already has executive orders that will handle this new law that will be passed. And we can see this playing, and I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. And you need to be prepared for what is coming. We can see that they're pushing this and they are moving this forward, because what do we know? We know that in October there are many things happening, and I'm not saying it's going to happen in October. I'm just listing all the things that I see that are happening. We understand that we have the Northeast Shake, Rattle, and Roll, whatever it's called, on October 17th. We see al-Qaeda giving us a warning. We see that al-Qaeda is creating chemical weapons or trying to obtain them. We see that al-Qaeda is in lone wolf groups. Cyber attacks. Janet Napolitano, leaving her office, has told us not if, but when a cyber attack hits. We understand that there is a power drill on the power grid happening in November. FBI is warning of cyber threats on the financial institutions and banks. There is a 1,000-bank drill coming up in October, a set of 4 days separated by 2 days in a row, and then a couple days off, and then 2 days in a row. And I have that listed on the x22report.com site. Just go over to potential false flags, and you'll see it down at the bottom. And now we're getting this warning that there is a worldwide terrorist threat alert, and they are pushing this forward. And what else we see is that NORAD plans nighttime air training exercises above D.C. this week. And the North American Aerospace Defense Command, better known as NORAD, will conduct the flight training beginning late Tuesday night to about 2 a.m. on Wednesday. So we see something happening here where they're practicing nighttime flights over D.C. What else do we see? Well, there is a huge theft of U.S. weapons in Libya. And I mentioned this before in other reports, and it was about nighttime goggles. But now they've stolen more than just that. They have stolen things that are much, much worse. According to the State Department and military sources, dozens of highly armored vehicles, called GMVs, are now missing. The vehicles feature GPS navigation as well as various sets of weapon mounts and can be outfitted with smoke grenade launchers. Hundreds of weapons are now missing, including 100 Glock pistols and more than 100 M4 rifles. And almost every single set of night vision goggles have been taken. And all these militias are tied into terrorist organizations. And the U.S.-developed training camp on the outskirts of Tripoli has been taken over by one of these militia groups who are hoarding weapons. The worry is this camp, abandoned by the U.S. trainers within the last month, is being used in preparation for an attack on the new Libyan government. The theft of these weapons and the open borders are feeding al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood and threatens Libya's neighbors as well. And what else do we know? Well, we have Senator McCain out there now. Senator John McCain said that the Kenya terrorist attack is the latest sign that al-Qaeda groups will not go away quietly despite U.S. and international efforts to defeat them. I think it shows the reach of al-Qaeda, and this notion that al-Qaeda is decimated and on the run is false. We see that they are resilient, they are prepared, they are growing, and they are much more sophisticated than they ever were. And as Senator Armed Service Committee Chairman Carl Levin said that the Nairobi attack has dramatized the concern that al-Shabaab could branch out from a regional terror threat to one with global reach. And also went on to say that to suggest that the attack in Kenya meant the terror group's next step was an attack on the U.S. could be a huge leap, but we do need to be prepared for something that might be coming here. Now, we understand that the U.S. Department has issued the worldwide terrorist threat, and it goes on to say that the State Department issues new worldwide caution on terrorist threats, that Americans must be vigilant while traveling. It details possible threats in Europe, Asia, and Africa. State Department says al-Qaeda plotting in multiple regions. The State Department remains concerned about the continued threat of terrorist attacks, demonstrations, and other violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests overseas. Current information suggests that al-Qaeda, its affiliated organizations, and other terrorist groups continue to plan terrorist attacks against U.S. interests in multiple regions. Now, we understand that they've done this before, and we saw the chemical attacks, and they locked down the Middle East, and they continue with the drone attacks to keep control of all the natural resources in the Middle East. We do understand that there's an ongoing discussion with Russia and Syria about the chemical weapons, and it seems like the U.S. is not satisfied with the list that Assad has handed over, that they believe that he's shipping chemical weapons out of the country, and things are not what they seem. And we can see that President Obama is continually talking about strikes, that they want the UN to sanction a strike if Assad doesn't, agree to all terms. And it's very easy for them to say, hey, they gave us a list, but we believe that he didn't give us all of it, and he didn't agree to the terms, so we can attack them. There's so many different things that they can make a play on this, and I see why they want this as a UN resolution, because this will give them the green light to go ahead and strike. And we understand that the UN is now in Syria, and they are ready to inspect what has happened there in Syria for August 21st, and all of a sudden we get this worldwide terror alert. And all of a sudden, as the UN forces arrive, clashes and fighting increases in Syria from the rebel side. And we're seeing that they're making it very difficult for the UN Security Council to go ahead and inspect these areas because, again, the central bankers, U.S. government, do not want them to find out the truth because this would hinder the plan that they have to oust Assad, put in the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, and set up a private Western central bank, and then eventually move into Iran and do the same thing. And this is what their plan is. But now we see that there's something else happening. There is a plan to get into Syria and Iran. They set up this new terrorist threat, and we need to be prepared because this is one step closer to the event happening here in the U.S., and they are building this up big time. So everyone needs to be getting prepared and ready for something to happen. I think this will and most likely will be a multiple strike. It will not be just a one-off thing because they need to do many things at once here. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.